All right, the second practice problem, helping us apply these concepts of fair value, present value, and some other things to our assets, is we have a landfill that's being built by WWF. They are going to spend the following expenditures over the time that they are building this landfill: 1.2 million, 700,000, 1.5 million, 2.3 million, for a total cost of 5.7 million. Absent any interest on that, that's what the cost would be that you would record on your balance sheet. But we know that we need to calculate what interest could be avoided if we had not built this project, or if we had hired someone else to build it and we were not doing it ourselves. That's really the question. What interest would we have not had to pay? So to do that, we do the weighted average of our expenditures. Okay, and so that basically says we need to take the dates and figure out how much time to the end of the year we owed that money. So the 1.2 million, okay, was right at the beginning, and so that's for 11/12. Okay, and then the 700,000 is for 8/12 of the year, or 2/3. Okay, and then these last two we're getting close to the end, so we only owe this much. Okay, for 3/12 and 2.3 million for just the last month. Kind of like if you were putting these all on a big, huge credit card. Okay, each time you spend more money, it's as if you had to put it on a credit card, and you're not paying it off anymore. It's just adding to the balance. And so at the end of the year, the interest for the first part is a lot more, or a lot longer than the ones that you borrowed right at the end of the year. So we take the amount, we multiply by the percentage of the year, if you will, or a calculation of how much of the year, and then we add them up. So the 1.2 million times 0.92, or 11/12, equals 1.1 million. Okay, and we adjust each one of those and add them up. And so our weighted average is only 2,133,333, even though our total cost is 5.7, because we spent a lot of the money right towards the end, and so we didn't have to owe for very long. That weighted average of our expenditures that we're going to use to calculate the interest is only 2.1 million. Now, the problem says we borrowed $2 million at 4%. Okay, so we have that covered, most of this weighted average, with that loan. 2 million at 4%, or 80,000. So that interest on that 2 million would be 80,000, but we did exceed that. And so anything went over the 4 million we had borrowed specifically for the project, we have to look elsewhere for the interest rate and to other loans that we might have outstanding that we could have paid off if we had not been building this building. So that extra 133,333 is at the interest rate on our other loans of 5%. And so that's about $6,667. So our total avoidable interest is $86,667. That's your avoidable interest. So your total cost of the building is 5.7 million plus the 86. So you got 5,786,66. Now, this is a scenario where we also have an obligation when we build this. So we're combining a couple of concepts we learned about in this week in this practice. We also have made a commitment to put it back in the way it was, and we estimate that that's going to cost about $2 million, but it's not going to happen for 40 years. So we take the present value of that $2 million 40 years from now, okay, at 4%. And that means that the equivalent of that is 416,000. You could also think about that as that if you put $416,000 in the bank today, and it earned 4% per year for 40 years, it would be the 2 million. So that's how the calculation works the other direction. But what we're really worried about is how much is that worth today to have to come up with $2 million 40 years from now. So that's the number. So the total cost of this asset is $6,203,000. Just a quick idea what the journal entry would look like, okay, for this asset. We would debit the asset, whatever we call it, okay, 5.7 million, okay, and credit cash or whatever we use to borrow the money, a loan payable. Then we would make a separate entry for the 86,000. That would be a debit to the asset and a credit to interest expense, because that's what we had, where we would have recorded that interest as we paid it on the loans. And then there would be the third entry would be the debit to the asset for $416,578 and a credit to asset retirement obligation, okay, a liability. So you'd have three. The total would add up to 6.2 million. You calculate depreciation on that total, and you just divide by 40 because that's how long it's going to last. That's 155,000. After 10 years, that means your accumulated depreciation would be 1.5 million, or just over that, 1,550,000. So you take the 6.2 million, subtract the 1.5, and you get 4.652. That would be the carrying value. Anytime you can consider an impairment of an asset, you first have to know what its carrying value is, which is always its original cost minus accumulated depreciation. So that's 4.6 million. Test for impairment, when there is a change of use, revolves around what the future cash flows are versus what the carrying value is. And so we use the information given to calculate our future cash flows, which is $19,500 per month for 12 years. For 12 months, right? So for multiply by 12 to get how much per year, and then for the next 25 years, it would be $5,850,000. So the future cash flows are higher than our carrying value. So there is no impairment. That's what an impairment test does, is it tells us if it's impaired or not. If it were impaired, then we would have to calculate the present value of those future cash flows to get the impairment amount. But you use no present value, no interest rate, just the future cash flows to determine whether it is actually impaired or not. That's your impairment test. So that's what you hopefully were able to work through on the practice. And then you can look back and see how you did and correct any thinking that you, any mistakes you might have made. Consider how to do it in the way that we've shown you, talked about here.